Hello again, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for a new episode of Edible Ethics, where we love to get good and high. I'm Jason, and this is
Stephanie.
And today we're going to jump into a discussion about the ethics of the use of animals in research.
In scientific research.
Exactly.
I guess I don't know what other kind of research there is.
Cosmetic research, which is scientific research, but with a very particular purpose in mind.
Okay. So when we're talking about animals in scientific research, we're going to lose a certain large group of people probably off the top, right? People who, under no circumstances, are we to do anything bad to animals. That's very crudely put, but wait a minute, we're supposed to talk about how we got high first.
You know what? That's an excellent point.
And we're both high this time, I think, right at the top.
For sure. I was able to get started a little early today, about 90 minutes ago. And in that time, I consumed two of the same edibles that I've enjoyed in previous episodes, the Smokies with a Z or Z, green apple, 10 milligrams each of THC, and I can't even think of the other, CBT? No.
CBD?
CBD, there you go. It's been a good high.
I guess so.
So those are really nice with that 1-to-1 ratio of THC and CBD. And then I've hit the pen a relatively large number of times, more than I remember trying to count. I would say 15 times, if I were to hazard a guess based on the amount of time that has elapsed and the depths of the goodness that I'm currently enjoying. And that was a hybrid key lime pie flavored indica leaning vape cartridge.
I, again, am getting high much cheaper than you are. And although we both want to give the caveat, as always, that we're both getting high legally as well. That's
in our jurisdictions.
In our jurisdictions and for our advanced ages. And I just went with 100% THC, no CBD in the mix this time.
Interesting.
It's indica.
Okay.
And it tasted somewhat like sour cherries.
In a good way?
Well, it's fine. Yeah, and that was 5 milligrams.
Okay.
I know, right?
Very good. So I'm at 20 milligrams plus a bunch of vapes, and you are at 5 milligrams, and I'm hybrid all round, plus of the CBD, and you have no CBD, and you are indica, not hybrid.
Right. That's how we're. That's
Just
how
a
we're
quick
high.
summary showing that despite the fact that I couldn't remember the acronym for one of the key components of what we discuss on this program, nonetheless, I can remember and summarize our current state of the discussion.
It's very impressive. I think it, yes, bodes well for our conversation today about the use of animals in scientific research. And what I was starting to say was that there's a certain number of people who don't want to talk about the use of animals for any purposes. And I realize I'm not trying to be dismissive. I'm just high. I know that's a very simplistic way to describe their.
Although there are some people at that far extreme.
Sure. But so we're not really going to tackle, correct, that larger issue of the use of animals.
Right. We're not going to get into that. There are all kinds of, really interesting discussions that have taken place at various different levels in terms of how to justify not using animals in some or all or any context. And if we get into that, we'll be here for a couple weeks. So what we wanted to do was just focus on one area where, again, there appears to be a really interesting split in people's attitudes toward the use of animals for scientific research. And so that suggests this is a really good place for us to start thinking about this narrower question of whether, and if so, how, to use animals in scientific research from an ethical point of view. And so just to backtrack 1 second, the way that we're trying to narrow the conversation, Stephanie, as you know, is just a way of sort of getting a sense of the moral landscape, the ethical landscape, and then trying to figure out, in a way that you and I have negotiated, how to get to a kind of fertile and interesting ground for a timely ethical conversation.
Right. So, it's similar to what we did, where we recognized there were larger ethical discussions around human modification and perhaps gene editing, and we were going to do the subset of those conversations on and just focus on the ethics of gene editing in humans. Now, so this time we're recognizing that there's kind of a whole world of ethical issues surrounding animals and our relationship to them. And we're going to narrow that landscape to the use of animals in scientific research in order to make it traversable in the time frame that we have.
Exactly. So some people call that making the problem tractable.
Okay. Oh, so yeah, we're totally going to solve the problem of the use of the use of animals in scientific research in the next half an hour while high.
Exactly, but it's a problem that's tractable in the sense that we can start a conversation that can be really productive, even if it has, no immediate solution. But we can point in the right direction, is what I'm suggesting.
Let's do it. We're taking as a given, again, that there are some situations in which the use of animals makes sense. This is the landscape we're traversing. The people we're talking to also have that agreement. That still leaves us with some pretty big questions.
It really does. And even within that narrower space of in some contexts, what we want to do is carve out, to make it a little bit more tractable, the particular context of scientific research. And then within that context, some people would want to break it down further into medical research and non-medical research, which is a kind of very difficult to define dichotomy, or apparent dichotomy or putative dichotomy. Our attitude is, let's be neutral about it and just stay at the level of scientific research. So the use of animals in scientific research, ethical or no.
Okay, so the ones that want to restrict it to medical research, I'm imagining that's in order to make it clear that the use of animals needs to be very directly tied to benefits to human bodies.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. And I forget what the other part might be.
But we're we're going to be at this higher level. But even at the higher level,
Much higher than last time. Oh, at this other higher level. Okay.
this other yeah, that's right. But even at this higher level, benefits to humans is going to be a very important consideration. Am I correct? Is that what happens?
So the question you're asking, Stephanie, about benefit to humans is an interesting question, right? On the one hand, does that mean all humans or humankind? Or does it mean benefit to particular groups of humans, and potentially in particular, a very small group of the wealthiest 0.1% of the world's population? So I think it's better for us to use the word populations. So the way to phrase it would be people you think would justify the use of animals in scientific research, assuming that scientific research has benefits or implicit benefits for human populations.
Yes, meaning that the humans are in there somehow, because there's no one out there arguing that, sure, just for funsies, go out and use animals in your scientific research.
There are certain federal departments, of course, that defy that plausible claim you just made. For instance, the Department of Defense has an agency, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, that funds very, very high risk, high reward, very expensive research, in some cases with no putative benefit to a small population of humans. I don't know why I went into that digression.
Well, but yeah, because they see it as high reward, and the reward is eventually to the American population at large. Yeah, for sure, right? And,
Yes.
I mean, I think that's what actually is happening is that there's no one out there involved in the doing of science
Yeah.
that doesn't think that the doing of science is a critical activity for the future of their kind.
Right.
Science itself carries has this moral weight. We give a lot of benefit of the doubt to people who are pursuing science,
We do.
that the very act of doing science is attempting to do good.
It's noble.
Right. So off the top, we're willing to contemplate the use of animals in scientific research because we feel so positively about science.
Yes, because science is noble. Science is a noble pursuit.
So what are the main arguments then against the use of animals in scientific research?
So the main arguments fall into the sort of categories of animal rights kinds of considerations that maybe belong elsewhere, because we've already agreed that there are at least certain contexts in which scientific research with non-human animals is justified. This is an episode in which, I mean, the longer I'm high, the higher I am. I haven't had any kind of come down yet.
Well, you've had a lot of weed.
Yeah, an expensive date.
And then, that's the gummies, right? The gummies are just...
Yeah, so I took the gummies about now 2 full hours ago. They say on the package, expect the biggest effect between 2 and 4 hours.
There you go. Prime time, baby.
Prime time. Which means that some bits of this discussion, Stephanie's going to have to splice my words from multiple different paragraphs in order to...
I'm going to create an AI version of your testimony here today.
Yeah, I mean, just run it past me.
I can make you say anything I want about animal research.
Oh, Stephanie, it was already true that you could make me say anything you want right now because I'm that high. But also, you could fake my voice.
That's right.
You could deep fake this discussion.
Right. The ethics of deep faking. I'll have to do
Oh,
that.
we're going to do that one time for sure. Oh, and please keep the comments coming in about topics you'd love to see us discuss as we get good and high on edible ethics.
And the ones we've been talking about so far, you have, as a philosopher of science and a philosopher of biology, you have had some considerable experience looking into already. But at one point, we're going to do a discussion around something you don't know very much about. And that's going to be...
I would love that.
I know. So we're walking this ethical landscape today pretty haphazardly and slowly, even more slowly. But so far, we've agreed that science it has some ethical weight as an activity that other activities do not have, such that we see a role, or are willing to look into the use of non-human animals, as you put it, in the service of pursuing that science. But so now we need to kind of restrict that somewhat, I presume. It's not any kind of science done by any person at all that we're comfortable with that, or are there some people that are comfortable just saying it's for science means that all use of animals is warranted?
I suspect that there's a small population that who will believe that, but I think that there's a much larger population that's more interested in the narrower claim that it's well targeted, well justified science in the pursuit of particular human benefits. That's what they want to see science using non-human animals be focused on.
And so there's the devil in the details, right? So what does well targeted and well justified science look like?
And those are my basic research questions at this particular point in time, literally.
Great.
In my day job when I'm good and not high.
And are those two ways that you track it? Well targeted and well justified?
Yes.
The difference between those being
targeted on a particular disease, typically, and then justified in relation to that.
And what would be some examples?
Research focused on juvenile diabetes, for instance, would be the target. And then within that, well-justified research would be research that promises based on feasible statements and feasible predictions will have the greater net benefit to humans in the juvenile diabetes space.
So, totally on board with the first part. Targeting sick kids is always a good practice.
Yes.
Helping sick kids, not, literally targeting them.
And I would actually claim targeting sick kids is a better target than targeting kids with juvenile diabetes, because targeting all sick kids has the prospect of a much greater impact, even though it spreads the resources very thin.
And doesn't it complicate the second part of your equation, which is the well-justified part?
Exactly, it does.
Which seems to be the much more difficult.
I think you're absolutely right.
That's where the bodies are buried.
Yes. So let's get into some of the challenges here. In addition to concerns about animal rights and so on, which we're going to set aside for now, one of the biggest debates that has really interesting ethical issues involved, as well as the kinds of epistemological issues we were just discussing, is about the use of particular animals in particular research contexts. And so, ought we to use particular species of non-human primates in research, or a narrower domain of research, say in neuroscience, or should we not be using non-human primates at all? I'm still not following my paragraphs. I felt I did better that time.
You started off really strong.
Yeah, I mean, that's the issue, the short-term memory. When I speak in paragraphs rather than in, actually interpretable sentences, I can't keep up.
Oh, that's a good lesson to kind of learn. Yeah, to not speak in paragraphs. So maybe this could be prescription medicine for men who mansplain. Give them
I love that.
weed before they go into meetings or interactions with large groups of women.
I love that. And for what it's worth, that would not be medical research. That would be, more broadly scientific research, even though with potential benefit for humans, really in a kind of business management setting.
Exactly. Okay, so we were talking about the use of primates in particular. Those class of animals, again, seem to have higher moral weight. We have ethical feelings about them that we don't necessarily have for bugs, say. And we want more from our science that uses those animals than we do from the science that, again, would use a worm or
A rat.
a rat, even. True?
Yeah, there's also a different part of that, which is there's also a push primarily from non-human primate researchers to fund more non-human primate research, as against the research on rodents, for instance, because even though we give higher moral weight to non-human primates, we give even higher weight to humans. And so if research with non-human primates is going to be more beneficial to humans than research with rodents, then despite the moral status of non-human primates, humans are going to win. That was a whole paragraph that made perfect sense.
That's great.
Yep. I don't know that it made perfect sense. I mean that at no point in saying it did I lose my train of thought, I think.
It will be interesting when we go back and review. So we have people saying we want more from our science that uses non-human primates. Let's just call them monkeys. Can we call them monkeys? I mean, I know it's not all monkeys, but
Yeah.
for a purpose of being high,
Yeah.
keep track of things.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have people wanting more from the science that uses monkeys because we ascribe more moral weight to their lives. And then we also have people who do research using monkeys saying that they are able to deliver that higher benefit, even to such an extent that it's an ethical obligation even to be using those monkeys because of the massive benefits to human population.
And humans, in the moral equation, humans win out over monkeys, just as monkeys win out over rats.
And rats went out over worms, etc.
Yeah, sadly.
Down the line.
Although there are various complications with this down the line moral evaluation thing that we're not going to get into today.
Right, it's not a line.
We're talking in a lot of shorthand because the debates are so complicated, and to get into them is to get down into a really dramatically interesting rabbit hole. this is where reading philosophy, it can be very interesting. Not every philosophical article about this, but the philosophical articles that take the science seriously.
But the worms are out, even though the worms are way down there or way over there or whatever. The worms are not sitting at the same table, morally speaking, as the monkeys. They unfortunately cannot deliver anywhere near the benefit. Any research on them cannot deliver anywhere near the benefit of as research on the monkeys.
Exactly.
So the worms are safe from us, largely, in terms of science.
And it has nothing to do with the moral status of the worms.
Yeah, except for, high school classes. I dissected a worm in high school. Did you?
I have no recollection of that.
In the name of science.
I feel that all of my high school memories, especially with regard to science, are clouded by shows like The Wonder Years, even though that period depicted in that show is much earlier than my lifetime. But I watched that show when I was a kid, and so,
So you don't remember doing science in high school? You just remember watching?
No, I don't remember watching it. It's just like if I try to concoct a memory of science in high school, I'm pretty sure it's an amalgamation of things like Saved by the Bell and The Wonder Years and shows like that.
So, well, I did a worm in high school, and I regret to say that if there is anyone who ascribes moral weight to a worm's life, I'm pretty sure that worm's life was wasted in my hands. I don't remember anything about it.
Right. Although it has in some ways potentially contributed to the foundation of the scientific literacy you have, but also the skepticism you have about science as such, because, there is a distinction between better science and worse science.
And that's the distinction that's problematic as well. Even if we accept the argument that monkeys have more moral weight than other animals, and should be reserved for science that has the greatest potential human benefit, and that things like neuroscience or other similar sciences do have the potential to deliver that greater human benefit, there's still the issue of the potential is there, but is the ability to make it happen there? Is it the case that the science is good enough science from a science perspective, not from an ethical perspective? So potentially can offer a huge benefit. That's clear. But can the science deliver us to that?
And that's a really great question, Stephanie. And the answer is, I think that requires more empirical research. It's an empirical question. And as of this point in time, we just haven't done enough monkey research in general. And the monkey research we have done has been limited to a very small number of species of monkeys.
So it's hard to answer whether the research that's being done, even with the big benefit, is good enough science to get us to that benefit, because we would have to do more research on monkeys to justify using monkeys to do research.
Exactly. And so at this point in time, as I say, it's an empirical question, and it's one that poses that sort of kind of paradox there. But I do think that, insofar as science is a noble pursuit, and in pursuit of noble goods for humankind in particular, but potentially more broadly, we've got. Can you play it back in your ear and just remind me the start of that? Great question, empirical question, blah, blah,
It's an
blah.
empirical question. We're in this paradox where we would need to use monkeys
Oh,
to
right.
do more research to find out whether it's justified to use
Yeah, so we're
monkeys.
in this, sort of almost paradoxical situation where to know whether monkey research is going to have the needed benefits requires us to do monkey research in the first place. And I think this is one of those areas where, insofar as we think as of science as a noble pursuit and pursuit of noble goods for humankind, insofar as we see science in that way, I think that that sort of pushes the need for more monkey research now over the goal line.
And then how do we feel about it ethically if we do that monkey research and what we learn from it is that it wasn't justified to do it?
I think at that point, what that presumes, Stephanie, is that we've got some kind of evaluation process in place on an appropriate time frame. And so, if it's the case that after 2 years the research is paused and said, you haven't translated into anything, I think that's going to be an unfair assessment. So we need to have an appropriate timeline. But let's pretend that we have all that stuff in place, let's say a 20-year timeline, with a particular requirement that the number of monkeys be especially well justified, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If we had that in place and science hadn't delivered, then I think we obviously need to pause.
My concern with that is that the scientific community and individual scientists, presumably, don't have a great record for acknowledging when things are not productive. And you've done quite a bit of work in the use of rodents in particular. Even if we don't give rodents any moral weight and their lives any moral weight, just from a resource use perspective, the amount of research that's being done on rodents that at this point we can expect to have very little translation benefit to humans. The amount of research that is wasted on rodent research seems substantial.
Absolutely.
So even though there has been evidence for years that rodent research is not scientifically an effective substitution for research on humans, scientists continue to do it and continue to ignore that it's bad science.
Yeah, I think we still want to be careful just being too general there, because I think that there are some domains in which it's crystal clear that the use of rodents has a direct benefit for humans, say in particular cases of determination of toxicity or dose or something to that effect.
Yeah, so you would we can't be too general. There are certain cases where the use of rats has panned out.
Yes, exactly. And so we could just say the use of rodents in medical research, accepting these domains, has not proven to be effective in leading to any health outcomes for human beings.
And when you say the scientific community and individual scientists continue to ignore that fact?
Absolutely.
So the concern being that if we go down the path with monkeys, I think the concern is that the scientific community and individual scientists may be clouded by their own commitment to their work, will avoid the potential ethical implications that they might be seeing coming from their own science.
Absolutely.
So what do we do? What's our takeaway?
So our takeaway is something we didn't actually talk about today, but
All right.
nonetheless, I think is implied by this conversation. There is a profound instinct within current university institutional culture to hide research that might be deemed morally controversial by the community. And animal experimentation with non-human primates is almost always hidden. The university will typically prohibit researchers to discuss their non-human research in public contexts, or limit any discussion of non-human primate research in any public communication like a website.
So it's hidden both physically in that it's often in buildings that are restricted and highly controlled, and then it's
hidden in being not talked about, and the institutional culture is not to talk about it. And I think the takeaway is we need to talk about these issues. And so let's resist that institutional culture and dare to have these ethical conversations that are deeply important.
I agree, even though we just maybe this is because of the last thing we're saying that we both can remember it. This is both of our takeaways. I agree that there's these signs people have on their lawns that gives a series of things that they believe in or positions that they take out, and one of them is science is real.
Right.
I'm not really sure what that means, but I'm going to say that ethics is real as well. These are real questions that I think people are capable of talking about, and not just scientists and philosophers, but I think everyone is capable of talking about human benefits, animal moral claims. Everyone has feelings about it, and they're all legitimate. I mean, it's legitimate to ask from science that it engage in this ethical conversation, and it will help the science in the long run.
Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely the path forward. I will say I wasted some time this past week watching some TikToks. And one of the TikToks I watched was an interview with a supporter of a particular extreme far right Republican candidate for the 2024 presidency. So, in interviewing a fan of this character, the claim was that the woke libtards keep pushing this stuff down our throats: climate change, science, and then the list went on and on. And so there's still an undercurrent, despite an inclination to believe that's only a tiny minority. We have to assume that when you and I say we may not be speaking for everyone.
True, although, you're not gonna convince that guy by hiding the science.
Well, I think that's an excellent point. In fact, you increase the likelihood of him rejecting that particular commitment against science by actually being able to explain something to him or demonstrate something to him that doesn't decide it ethically, but at least gives him a better platform on which to deliberate about his particular ethical obligation. And to me, that's a win.
Me too.
Well, I think we've been pretty good and high today, Stephanie.
It's been a good day.
Yeah, my only question is whether I'm going to keep the high, um, and see how cheaply I can maintain it. It
You could
is a beautiful day here to just be in my lazy boy.
Well, you can always take a CBD nap. Man, those CBD naps are the best ones.
I will maybe try that because naps are nice.
They're really nice.
And I ran all my errands already.
Well, yeah, don't leave the house.
Well, thanks so much
So
for listening to us. Today was maybe more blather on my part about some of the ethical issues that are raised by the question of the use of non human animals in scientific research.
and maybe you all can have a good and high session of your own and contribute to that conversation.
Please do.
In any case, we hope you join us for the next episode in a couple weeks.
Bye, y'all.